So today we've got a very special guest, George Holmes, Vice-Chancellor from Bolton University, for our latest episode of Proper Tea with OBI. Have you got your tea there, George?
Yeah. I have indeed.
George, thank you very much for coming on today. We've had business people, property people, sports people, but one sector which must be, it must be very interesting times, to say one way of putting it, is the educational sector. And running a university, how have you responded to what's gone on over the last 3 or 4 months?
Well, I mean, like everybody else, well, it's been an unprecedented time of difficulty for the sector, because clearly you're all geared up to finish your academic year as normally, sort of March through to May, June time. And that's just the time we were locked down. So students will be expecting to finish their final sessions and their revisions and their exams, and, coming in, and then they'd normally have all their celebrations, as, with all their friends going out at night, sort of saying, the year's over. And so that was hit with lockdown. And so it's not been an easy time. We've had to transfer all our year-ending work onto distance and electronic mediated learning. We've used a lot of, I hadn't ever heard myself of Zoom before until this particular period. And of course we live on it now, along with MS Teams and various other arrangements. But, we've used our computer-based delivery methods really extensively, and students have adapted really well, which is a good thing. We're finding students are much, oddly enough, the attendance at formal classes via some sort of computer media is a higher level of attendance than through normal attendance. Wow. So, because they've not had to sort of struggle their way through the Manchester traffic in a morning into Bolton or whatever, and because they've not had to roll out of bed 2 hours earlier than normal, they've been able to roll out of bed, 10 minutes before their class, connect in, and away they go. And so in that sense, attendance has been good. So what was potentially a really difficult situation, the students and the staff have made a lot of at Bolton. They've done really well, and they've engaged well. And of course, we've changed our assessment methods to ensure students aren't, there's what's called a no detriment policy, or a policy to ensure students aren't badly affected by this, so that different types of assessment, because you can't do a traditional exam anymore, of course, with this, because you just can't go into the rooms, so with the social distancing. So there's been a lot going on, and so it's been a difficult term, but our real efforts as a management team have been placed on how to get ready for September opening.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, actually. What is the plan for the autumn, when students are due to return, if you like?
Well, the University of Bolton was proud to be, we didn't necessarily intend to be, but we're proud to be the first in the country to announce, oddly enough, on the same day as Cambridge announced it was closing for next year in terms of its live sessions, we were the first to announce we will be open and operating in September. And that's now we announced that probably, I don't know, 8 weeks ago or so. And the only reason we could do that is we have spent absolutely hours and hours of time with facilities department and staff, working out what arrangements would need to be put in place. And we were ready before the government guidelines were issued. I mean, we were ready with what we needed. And so the sorts of things we're putting in place, if you're traveling to Bolton University as a student next year, a full-time student, and you're traveling from a local distance, whether it be, Halls of Residence House, or whether it be your own home or a family home in the area, you can actually have a free loan bike. So you don't have to go on public transport. So we bought 1,000. My first task was to buy 1,000 bikes from Halfords, which was the biggest order they've ever had, apparently, nationally, Halfords.
I was going to say, you wouldn't be able to buy them all from one.
No, it was a national order that they've had to, sort of pull together, and they've had a full-time team. So I'm taking a sip of the old tea there for proper tea. I'm taking. They've got a full-time team working on them all the time at the minute. About six people who are putting them together, assembling them, and logoing them up with the university logo. And it's hashtag uni as it should be, Bolton University, because our student satisfaction is incredibly high, and this is part of our satisfaction, that we respond to their needs. So we thought they're going to have a public transport issue. Let's get them some transport. So people can come in their cars, of course, they can come on public transport, but if they want, they can have a bike, and that's free. And they keep it for the year, their own bike.
So they can get the bike for the year?
They get the whole bike for the year. So basically they turn up, now they're registering. We've got a lot of people now just registering electronically their interest in the bikes, saying, we want one from the 12th of September. And they will turn up, they'll be handed the bike over with a helmet and other safety features. And that's theirs for the year. And then all we have to do is to return it at the end of the year. So there's no cost, no charge to them. And that gets them transport in and out. We've built on campus now additional bike racks and stacks and areas for them to keep them safe when they get on campus. So that's the first thing. And then of course when you arrive, the next thing you get with our campus is we have 8 main entrances. We've narrowed it down to 8. So there were more entrances, but we've closed some of the subsidiary entrances. Yeah. And those 8 now have these thermal airport scanner machines on that you walk through. And it will scan your temperature. It also is a metal detector as well. It'll check whether you're carrying any metal, but clearly that's not the prime objective. The objective is check your temperature, and it flashes. I mean, we've done examples. It flashes bright red around the edges if anyone has an abnormal temperature.
Well,
and it's staffed.
Very quick then.
It's instant.
It's quickly.
It's walk up. I mean, I've used it multiple times now. Literally, you can walk up to it at normal walking pace, and it will register your temperature immediately on a thermal imaging scanner. You get a scanner picture on the side of the unit, and above you get the red lights. And so anybody who turns red on that in terms of the lights, there's a member of staff on hand at each of those machines, at each of the 8 entrances, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day. Different staff, of course, during the day as they change shifts. But they would then say to you, if it was you, Will, you've not registered as a usual temperature, normal temperature, we recommend you go and get yourself checked out. Wow. And so we won't admit you at that point on that day. We'd ask you to go and have yourself checked out. Once you're in, sanitizer station, usual stuff, sort of the gloves and the masks are all provided. We've got several thousand logoed university masks for people if they want to wear those. They have to wear them inside the building, not university logoed ones, but they have to wear a face covering. No face covering, no entry, because according to Patrick Vallance and Chris Whitty, the advice is that a face mask protects other people from you if you're infected. To some extent protects other people. It stops the dropules being released as easily. And clearly, there are lots of asymptomatic people, it would seem, who are still highly infectious. Yeah. So you might feel perfectly well, I might feel perfectly well, but if we're carrying this virus asymptomatically during the time we're infected, then if we haven't got a mask on, as I understand the science, then we could easily transmit through droplets. We could easily transmit that to someone who then could be at high risk. And for us, a lot of our staff are north of 50 in terms of their age group. And there's a lot of evidence that suggests that older individuals tend to respond worse in terms of treatment to this particular virus. It tends to be more difficult. We saw it with the Prime Minister who's in that age group. Yeah. I'm in that age group. It could, and so to protect the staff, the masks are there because whilst the masks will be the staff will be wearing their masks. Of course, the students also, who are less likely to be ill, i.e., symptomatically ill. But could transmit the virus are obviously kept with the masks on. You go into the classrooms, all the corridors are one way, so you can't go 2 ways down a corridor. 2 meters apart, we're sticking to inside the buildings. Classrooms, they're spaced out equally. We've got special 2 meter metering sticks to measure the rooms out, in terms of the set out. Yeah. The staff, if they're doing a formal class lecture, will be behind. We've got big perspex screens on site, so 6 foot high plus perspex screens. So you stand behind them, and they also wear a visor at that point rather than a face mask to lecture, so that those who've got hearing impairment can actually lip read if they want to. Some students do. With a visor you can do that. With a mask you can't. So clearly we've thought that one through. The library, the library's amazing because we bought a consignment of, I think it's 30 or 40 supermarket trolleys, traditional supermarket trolleys, and those are students to go around the book stacks with to keep everybody apart. Once the 30 trolleys have been issued, nobody can go in.
That's just a distance measuring way of not to fill it with books.
No, well, they can fill it with books, of course, but it's a distancing measure, so that basically they put their books in. But it's just like going to the supermarket, but instead of being beans on the shelf, it's books on the shelf. Yeah. And in that way, we also ration the number going in because once the trolleys are issued, you can't go in until you get a trolley. So the trolley will come out.
Whose idea was that?
Well, I hate to admit that I'm the sort of person who sits at 3 a.m, sort of with a notepad, thinking of ideas and thinking, how do you manage the library? And I'm afraid I have to admit that was one of my slightly crazy ideas, but it's
yeah, it's good. I like it.
It
Very
manages to flow.
yeah, sensible way of doing it. Well, it sounds like you covered a lot of ideas in a short space of time.
Yeah, well, what was good about it from our point of view is that we did it before the government guidance was issued on university campuses, and clearly we were therefore planning for the worst, as it were. We are more than compliant with the guidance. You know, we're way ahead. I mean, there's no guidance for supermarket trolleys and library rationing, for example, and there's no guidance that requires you to have a permanent, you know, high tech, you know, £10,000 plus per unit heat scanner that as you go in.
Yeah.
You know, at most you'd be guiding some of these handheld sort of. You know,
that's what I've had. When I get into buildings or restaurants, you usually get the sort of gun put to your head on entry, which isn't quite as nice as walking through a scanner.
Yeah, no. And then cafes, if we were having a real cup of tea, as it were, in the university cafes, then all the tables are socially distanced between each other, but they've got a perspex screen. If you and I were now sitting at a table, there'd be a perspex screen between us in the university, so that we can, at that point, remove our mask to drink. Yeah. But I can't project the virus easily onto you because of the screen, and vice versa, if either of us happen to have it asymptomatically.
And how does it work with the student union, George? I can't remember. Does the university run its student union, or do the students run it? Hence the name. Yeah.
The student union is a separate legal body in every university from the university.
Is it?
Yeah, they're all an incorporated body. They have their own trustees. They're a charity, and they have their own executive, managing director, chief exec, union manager, general manager, those sort of phrases. Ours has got a general manager. They elect a president and other sabbatical officers who are paid by the union. The union collects its income through 3 sources: a large grant from the university, subscriptions from its members, and sales in its shops and bars and restaurants on campus.
What's the relationship like between the two bodies, you and them?
Ours is absolutely brilliant. I mean, our SU president, you'll probably, if you tweet him, the Bolton Uni SU president, you will see that Ansh is about to enter his 2nd term of office. It's a 2-year office maximum. He's been in it for a year. He worked with me through we had a residential fire in a private landlord's building during the last year, and he worked closely with me. You know, 45 hours we worked together without sleep during that. Wow. And that's great because it really builds a team. You know, there's nothing better than for building a team, oddly enough, than some form of crisis. And of course, Corona's also a crisis. So they've been working really well with us. In terms of how it works at the SU, they clearly cannot offer the big gigs and events that you would offer traditionally. So, you know, Freshers Week is going to be very much a diluted affair in every university because of the inability at the minute to hold, you know, the equivalent of a major festival in university halls. So you will find what the SU president's doing now is he's trying to do virtual freshers and things that can be done online, things that engage people and keep people engaged, because you can't do the big freshers crush, as it was called, which is literally, you know, bringing them all into one space and having everything from a party to a games night. You know, that's not going to be as easy. But games nights can be done online. But some of the stuff's going to be tricky. And the union shop can go ahead selling goods and services, but union cafes are going to have to clearly follow the guidelines on campus.
And it's been a very successful story since you've led the university, George. How have you built its brand profile? You made it very popular. What's been the key ingredients to all that?
I mean, we sat down. I've been there. This is my 16th year in post as the head of the university. We sat down. We got university title in 2004. I arrived in 2005, and we're trying to work out, you know, what's going to be special about this, because, you know, I did an MBA many years ago, and the key thing was, you know, what is distinctively competent about your business? What's unique about your business? What are you selling that's different? Yeah. What are you selling that's special?
People miss that, don't they? So many businesses miss that.
They do, and this is about, you know, what's the unique value added of your business as opposed to the competitor. What's the, and, you know, we are a business. You know, we're basically £100 million a year group turnover business now, and you know, and what is it that makes us distinctive? Well, you know, universities traditionally were research institutions that taught students. You know, if you go right the way back, you know, for hundreds of years, they were about creating brand new knowledge and having an undergraduate group of people to impart that to whose that knowledge would transfer to. As years have gone on, of course, more and more universities have entered the field, you know, in terms of people being made universities, etc., polytechnics, etc., and teaching's become more important. But we looked around this, there was still, at the time, we're talking 2005-06 now, there was still nobody who actually said it's teaching first. Most universities, and it's really interesting, it says something about the sector and in business in general. Most universities that joined the sector tried to ape their competitors, which is the wrong business to be in. You know, don't open a cafe and copy the menu next door. It doesn't work. Yeah. But universities, we've done it in the sector. You know, Polytechnic X becomes University X. You know, what does the university down the road that's been there 100 years look like? Right, we want to look like that then.
Yeah.
Completely the wrong decision, because that already exists and is probably better at it than you are.
Yeah.
So, you know, like the cafe next door may exist and be better than you are. If you run the same menu, it's not wise. So we said, nobody has said teaching first, almost teaching only, where the number one focus is making sure that you get the best educational experience for the student group. And so that's what we focused on, to say, we're not going to try and compete with Manchester University, which is a brilliant university. We're not going to try and compete with them at research, because they spend, what, $250 million plus a year on research alone.
Wow.
And, you know, and to compete with them, it's like a local football team competing with Manchester United. You know, you haven't got the money and the resources to do that on research. But what we can do is, you know, our crowd, if you like, if you see it in the football context, our crowd have got the best seats, our crowd have got the best food and entertainment, our crowd have got the best spectator spots, and our crowd get more out of the game than those people maybe even got even better players than us. Yeah. And that's the issue, that the research professors at some of these great universities, Oxford, Cambridge, you know, Imperial, Durham, Manchester, you know, Warwick, etc., wonderfully bright academics, could be the best in the world, but the spectators, the students, don't often get to see them play. Whereas in our institution, the students get to see our professors play every day. Our professors are out there. And indeed, we appointed 30 plus people with the title professor or associate professor, just with the focus on being excellent teachers. So what we've done is we said it's all about, you know, the crowd, the student satisfaction. It's all about getting them really happy with what they're achieving and getting them to learn really effectively so they get the most out of the game. And I don't know if you've ever watched, using the football analogy, I don't know if you have, I'm not a football fan particularly, but if you've ever watched a football game live, and then you watch it on TV afterwards, and they take an aerial view, and then they ring round where the one player's going to pass to another, and they show you the arrow on TV. Yeah. Now, that's what we do for our students when it comes to learning with the game. So instead of just being live at the game, which they are, we actually then show them what the moves are in terms of their learning. And you learn a lot more about that by standing back and looking at it. So in that sense, with us, our main unique selling point was to get the best possible experience for the people on the course and to get the clearest explanation of what's going on. And that football illustration is a pretty good one, I think, because it shows, you know, you can see a lot more.
Sticking on that, your involvement in the local community has also been very noticeable from the outside looking in. Obviously, you did have some involvement with the football club, but I know it goes a lot wider than that. Talk to us a bit about just how you have embraced the community and given quite a bit back.
Yeah, I mean, we believe, you know, that the sort of people who are at the university, the staff, the students, and the governing body, etc., believe that town and gown should connect. You know, the idea, you know, look at Cambridge. You can't split the town from the university in the sense of the location. And in that sense, with us, we thought that the important thing here is Bolton needs a leg up, needs help. You know, most provincial towns need help these days. You know, look what's happened across the country in terms of the high street. it's been affected in most areas, and Bolton's had that effect in the past. And what we thought was, if we could work closely with the town, then we could actually have a symbiotic relationship, a positive relationship that, they help us, we help them. So we're closely connected to local authority, the civic concept. So, you'll see me at virtually every civic event, from mayor making to, Sunday parades to cenotaph ceremonies, etc. Because the university needs to be integrated into the community. It needs to be part of that community.
And
it came out that community.
How does that spill into the wider Greater Manchester GM community?
Yeah, I mean, not as much as it should.
Really?
We are focused, in a sense, quite locally at the minute, because we're trying to get us to be a beacon, both the town and the university to be a beacon for growth, for excellence, for inward investment, for people seeing it as a good place to live and study and etc. And in that sense, you have to be quite selfish about that, in terms of saying we really need to focus on that.
Yeah.
And again, it's about the difference between, I think it's being all things to all people and trying to do everything, and being really focused.
Yeah.
And this is about, it's the same focus. It's improve and talk up Bolton as a town, get Bolton better as a town, and it's making good progress. Improve and talk up and make good progress with the university, and then get them to do that, support us, and us to support them. And then all the local bodies, the Octagon Theatre, the Lads and Girls Club, in Bolton, which is a wonderful organisation. Both of them are. The football club, despite its ups and downs, was the lifeblood of this town for over 100 years. It's been phenomenal to the town, and we need to be supporting and working with them. The NHS in Bolton, we're massively connected to them now for nurse training and paramedic training and development, ambulance service, police service. We're connected to all the major public services, and again, closely linked to Warburton's, the bakers, who are the nation's largest bread suppliers, I think. And they're working with us on our logistics courses in our business school. We just started to develop a link a little bit further afield through Logistics North with the whole logistics delivery field. You've got Amazon out there, haven't you, now? And you've got Aldi's regional depot and things like that. We just managed to get Eddie Stobart's interested and involved in our logistics programs as well. So that's widening it slightly out of the region. But our direct involvement with Central and Greater Manchester, big supporter of the mayoralty, of the options of having a mayor for Greater Manchester, and Andy's a graduate of this university, Andy Burnham, so couldn't do better than that, having one of our own graduates in there. But in that sense, we don't do as much sub-regionally as we do locally at the moment, because again, it's specialisation.
And to finish off, George, I probably should have asked you this at the start, but I didn't. So we'll finish on what's your story?
Yeah.
The last journey years, but what about before?
What's it? Journeyman academic turned administrator. Is that the best description? Would they have the academic? I started life as an economist, and did some private work as an economist in terms of commercial stuff. Then went into education and worked my way through the the lecturer, senior lecturer, dean type role, teaching economics and business. And of course, realised one day that I thought, the person who's doing that job just above me doesn't seem that much better than I am, really, in terms of it's quite capable. So let's give it a whirl when that job comes up. And the next thing you know, you've progressed through the slippery tree, haven't you? And you've ended up at the top. And I've travelled around. I worked in Leeds at the Met there, and I worked in Lincoln at the university there, forming and establishing that in the 90s. And then in London, or what is now London Met, but was University of North London. Back in Doncaster as the principal of that college, a big F&HE college, and then here in Bolton 15, 16 years ago. So it's been a long journey. I'm obviously a lot older than I look. I'm clearly wearing well with it. But I've got about another 10 years to doing this job.
Well, you've got plenty of energy. That's the main thing. And I think, I'd just like to finish saying thanks. One, I know you're a very busy guy, so thank you for coming on today. And two, a big well done. You are obviously an inspiring leader, and you've got a lot, the setup and the plan for returning to the university. I hope everyone appreciates. There's been I can imagine a lot of thought and a lot of hard work and investment in making sure it's as safe as possible for your students. So great effort. But thanks for coming on, and keep in touch.
Well, thanks very much for having me. It's much appreciated. Thanks, Will.
No problem. Thank you. Cheers, George.